In this lecture, we will be talking about fiscal policy and multiplier effect. Multiplier effect is the cornerstone of fiscal policy. The question is, what does this multiplier effect mean? So let's first try to define multiplier effect. The multiplier effect refers to the additional increase in aggregate demand that results when expansion fiscal policy increases income and thereby increases consumer spending. Now, perhaps it will become much clearer if we do an example. And here is an example of an multiplier effect. So an original increase in government spending of say $100 causes a rise in aggregate expenditure of $100 because as G increases is to increase in AAD. Now if G increases by $100, which means AD increases by $100. But that $100 is income to others in the economy, and after they save, pay taxes and buy imports, suppose they spend $75 out of that $100 in the second round. Now that $100 that government spent is not going out of the system. Somebody's income is increasing by $100. But obviously suppose I work and I get that $100. Now I'm not going to spend that $100 because I'm going to save a part of it in my bank for the future. Suppose I spend say $75 out of $100, which means that I spend 75% of my income. In that case, I'll go out and spend $75, but moment I go and spend $75, consumption increases, but at the same time, somebody else's income increases. Suppose I spend that $75 for a nice dinner with my family, which means that the restaurant owner got that $75, which obviously the restaurant owner is not going to spend all of that. That person is going to save a part of it and they will spend the rest. And this process can go on. And moment that person spends the money, this process can go on for some time. As a result, it can lead to much bigger increase in aggregate demand than initially done by government, which was $100. So thus the original government spending of $100 is multiplied by the cycles of spending, but the impact of each successive cycle gets smaller and smaller because we really don't spend all the money that we are earning. We do save a part of it. Now to understand this multiplier effect better, we need to first understand the concept of marginal propensity to consume. So what is MPC or marginal propensity to consume? It is the fraction of extra income that a household consumes rather than saves. So suppose I get this 100 additional dollars and the portion of that income I spend is your marginal propensity to consume, and it is always measured in terms of percentage. Say I spend say 75% of my additional income, then marginal propensity to consume is 0.75 or 75%. So let's go back to our original example of $100 increase and let's try to understand what does it mean. So, and let's say this is a stage 1. G increases by say 100 billion, which essentially means that AD increases by 100 billion, and say in stage 2, now $100 billion that government spent has become somebody's income. Let's assume that our MPC is 0.75 or 75%, which means that we'll be spending 75% of our income, which means that the $100 billion that came through the system, people are going to spend 75% of that. So in the stage 2 or round 2, consumption increases by 75% of 100 billion, again dollar, which is equal to $75 billion. C increase. Now if consumption increases by $75 billion, what happens to aggregate demand? Aggregate demand increases by additional $75 billion. So the actual increase in aggregate demand is 100 billion plus 75 billion. So total increase in aggregate demand equal to first 100 billion plus $75 billion equal to $175 billion. Now stage 3. The moment you go out and spend that $75 billion, which becomes somebody's income, right? But again, our MPC is 75%. So in the next round, we spend 75% of $75. So in the stage 3, C increases by 75% of $75 billion, which is equal to $56.25 billion increase in C. Now this will lead to increase in AD by $56.25 billion. Now again, this 56.25 becomes somebody's income. They are going to spend 75% of this, and this goes on forever. And when it ends, our increase in GDP is way more than initial $100 billion by the government. And this is the classic multiplier effect. Now, thankfully, there's a better way to measure it, and there's a simple formula for it. And this is how we measure multiplier. Multiplier is nothing but 1 over 1 minus MPC. So this will give you the total size of the multiplier, or by how many times your GDP is going to go up if government expenditure increases by $100 billion. So let's try to complete the example. So let's say our MPC is 3/4. So our multiplier is 1 over 1 minus 3/4, which is 4. So in this case, a $100 billion increase in government spending generates $400 billion of increased demand for goods and services. Why so? So change in GDP equal to multiplier times change in G. So multiplier is 4, right? So it's coming from here, times change in G is 100 billion, which gives you $400 billion. Now, what if your MPC is say 0.5? And here's the fun fact. Assume MPC is 0.5. That means people do spend only 50% of their additional income, not 75. Then here's the multiplier. Multiplier would be 1 over 1 minus 0.5, which gives you 2. If this is true, then change. Now triangle means change. Change in GDP equal to 2 times change in G, which is 2 times 100 billion, which gives you $200 billion. Now here's the fun fact. The fact is this: higher the MPC, higher is your multiplier, and lower the MPC, lower is your multiplier. So that's why in a Keynesian world, more money you spend, better off we are. Why? Because your spending becomes somebody's income. As somebody goes out and spend that money, it becomes somebody else's income. So spending is a virtue in the Keynesian world. That's why when those tax reforms and government spending bills were passed, people were encouraged to spend rather than save, because more you save, which means that less money is circulating through the system. So it is very important that in a Keynesian world, we need to understand that spending or higher marginal propensity to consume often help with the multiplier effect and as a result with the economy.